Okay, Watershed Restoration by Nicole Jones. So the watershed that I am speaking about is the Sacramento Watershed Basin. This basin is vast. The gauge that I selected is in the Sacramento Valley subregion. It covers about 5,500 square miles from Redding to the southern part of the city of Sacramento. It is fed by major rivers like the American River, Feather River, and Yuba River, but there is a bunch more smaller streams and rivers. Those are just some of the major ones, as well as the Trinity River also has water that's diverted into the Sacramento River. It's surrounded on both sides by the Cascade, Sierra Nevada, and the Coastal Range Mountains, and it empties into the San Francisco Bay after traveling through the San Joaquin River Delta. The water in this watershed is used for agriculture, industry, and drinking. The disturbance that I'm focusing on in this area is agricultural activity. This area has agricultural activity, urban development. There's a landfill, wastewater treatment. There's a couple airports, military base, golf courses, all sorts of stuff. There's like a landfill and that wastewater treatment. You can see it in the picture. The main disturbance that I'm focused on is that impact that the agriculture has on the watershed. The agriculture in this area, you can see on the left side of the picture, affects the water quality by the runoff of pesticides, the runoff of fertilizers, eutrophication, which causes depletion of dissolved oxygen in the water. It causes increased erosion, which adds increased sediment into the water. There's increased water acidity because of this, the sediment and the runoff of the pesticides. And that also, whoops, there's a letter missing. Also, it causes increased water temperature. If there's too much water taken from the river, it causes the water temperature to rise, which is toxic to the fish that live in Sacramento River. They're pretty temperature sensitive, the Chinook salmon and steelhead. Water metrics show that this area falls within the guidelines for healthy water, but there is still pollution occurring, especially in some of the aquifers and groundwater. They've shown that there are still pollutants getting into that area. So the plan is that in reality, the area can't be restored to its prior state. People live here, people depend on the area for their livelihood, for agriculture. We need the food for agriculture. So we can't just come in and say, hey, everybody move out. We're going to plant trees here and we're going to get rid of all these pollutants. We need this area. So the only way to really restore the problem or restore the damage is to find balance as well as management, which would be adding a few things as well as managing the activities that are occurring there. That is currently happening right now, and I think California does a pretty good job of management in this area. But those practices need to be continued, but also people need to be educated on reducing water waste as well as reducing pollution, monitoring the water quality and correct any people who pollute, which is still a practice it's in right now. Reduce the use of pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. That is definitely something that could be focused on, as well as I did read a study that showed that chemicals, if used at certain times, are more prone to be found in the river when there's more rain and runoff. So using chemicals at specific times of the year when there's less chance of runoff is one practice that could be implemented. The biggest thing is the additions. So the additions would be adding trees and plant life near the water's edge and around crop areas of buffer zones to reduce erosion, sediment runoff, and increase absorption in those target areas. Adding those buffer zones, there was a study done by some very hard names to say, but one of the last names is Dragon. You'll see it in my references. talked about those buffer zones would increase the absorption as well as decrease the sediment or the runoff in the sediment into the water by keeping the pesticides and fertilizers in the target areas. And so that was really interesting. Also, integrating more wetland mitigation areas into the area. This would reduce the runoff by increasing the water quality. It reduces the presence of pesticides by trapping particulates and sediments, and it helps control flooding, which Sacramento is very prone to flooding, and increases areas of water storage as well as recharges aquifers. It also filters the water so the aquifers are not polluted, so it helps that difficulty that we're experiencing, and I found documentation of in my research. And it also supports more plant animal life for a richer and healthier area with more biodiversity in the ecosystem in this area. So those are the things that we can add that would really help. These are my references. And here are the names that are really hard to say and drag in, but that was a pretty interesting article. Okay, thank you very much.